Welcome in to another episode of my Dynasty Fantasy Football YouTube. Today, I'm looking at some Dynasty veteran stashes, especially based on what happened in the NFL draft. Make sure to like, comment, and most importantly, subscribe if you haven't. Let's go. So, number one, Dameon Pierce from the Texans. And we know that Pierce actually had a decent start to his career in 2022. As a rookie, he was pretty good. So, in just 13 games, 220 carries, 939 yards, 4 touchdowns, 4.3 yards per carry is okay. 30 catches, 165 yards and a touchdown. RB27, 12.8 points per game for fantasy, 20th among running backs. Now, that's a very solid start to his career. Unfortunately, the coaching staff left and a new coaching staff came in. And let's just say that they were not a big fan of Dameon Pierce. 145 carries, 416 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2.9 yards a carry, and 13 catches for 101 yards. He sucked in their system. Devin Singletary displaced him as the clear starter. And by the end of the season, Pierce was barely seeing any work at all. Currently, Pierce is the clear RB2 behind Joe Mixon. They added Jawar Jordan as the RB3, I guess, in the NFL draft in the 6th round. I mean, he's not much of a running back, if I'm being honest. So he's still the clear backup handcuff on a very strong offense. And he has a few paths to relevance. Number one, if Joe Mixon gets hurt. Now, Joe Mixon is already 28. They gave him a ridiculous contract extension that I still don't understand. Mixon has been in decline for years, but he still puts up the volume numbers. However, he has a lot of miles on him. If this were the year that Mixon wore out or wore down, I wouldn't be surprised at all. Additionally, there are some rumors, and these are just rumors, that there are teams that are interested in trading for Dameon Pierce. I find that hard to believe. I don't know why the Texans would let him go because they have nothing else on the depth chart, but he does have that path to relevance, and people will believe it for fantasy because he was fantasy relevant before. Now, interestingly, and I've noticed this on Keep Trade Cut, a lot of these veterans are still higher than rookies. I tend to have rookies higher. So he's RB57 in their rankings. I have him at RB60, but overall, I have him significantly higher than Keep Trade Cut because I have him ahead of a lot of wide receivers. In general, these types of running backs are my favorite stashes in Dynasty because we know they were fantasy successful before. He's still not that old, and sometimes opportunity comes out of nowhere. Next up, Tyler Conklin. Now, I think most people had dismissed Conklin before the NFL draft because everyone linked the Jets to Brock Bowers, which didn't happen. It didn't happen. They had the opportunity to pick him, and they chose not to. So let's take a look. Conklin has been very consistent over the last 3 years. 61 catches, 593 yards, 3 touchdowns, tight end 16 finish, 8.1 points per game, 20th among tight ends in his last year in Minnesota in 2021. Then he went to the Jets, almost identical in 2022. And then in 2023, again, mostly with Zach Wilson, almost identical numbers. In fact, Conklin has had between 3.4 and 3.6 and 32.5 and 36.5. So a tight little range of per game stats in all 3 of the last season. So there's really no difference in his production over the last 3 years. He's not in decline. He's not getting better. The same. Now let's look at his current situation. He's competing with, coming back from injury, Mike Williams, rookie Malachi Corley, and UDFA from last year, Xavier Gipson, for targets behind Garrett Wilson, who's obviously the wide receiver 1 there. Aaron Rodgers is returning to the lineup. Now, let's look at Conklin's situation. Why might it get better? What's the path to relevance? So the last 2 years, he had no quarterback. Nothing. Zach Wilson was horrible. 2021, of course, he had Kirk Cousins. But, so Aaron Rodgers is, obviously the best quarterback he's had since that 2021 Cousins year. However, that year, he was fighting for targets against Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen. Now, whatever Adam Thielen was that year, he's still a lot better than 2021 Adam Thielen was a lot better than Mike Williams, Malachi Corley, or Xavier Gipson is now. And they also had KJ Osborne, who was actually pretty good as a wide receiver 3. So he has less target competition and a better quarterback overall than his last few years. Plus, of course, touchdown regression. He had 0 touchdowns last year on 61 catches. That's not likely to repeat. You could see that he could have 7 or 8 touchdowns if he gets on the positive side instead of the negative side of touchdown regression, where he's been all of the last 3 years. What's his KTC Dynasty value? Tight end 39, pretty much dismissed. I'm a tight end 31 just because I think you're going to have some streaming opportunities from Tyler Conklin if Aaron Rodgers stays healthy. So he shouldn't be like off rosters, which is what tight end 39 represents. Next up, we have A.T. Perry. So A.T. Perry, another player I just assumed would be replaced in the NFL draft. I gave the Saints a wide receiver in round 2 in most of my pre-draft mocks because I thought that they had Chris Olave. They have Rashid Shaheed. They had tight end. They have Juwan Johnson, Taysom Hill to kind of mix in. But what they didn't really have is a wide receiver 2. And I thought they would draft one. They did not draft one. They drafted Bub Means in the 5th. I mean, Bub Means is not a real prospect. So for now, I feel like Olave's the 1, Shaheed is the 2, A.T. Perry is competing and will start as the wide receiver 3. And he looked decent in limited work last year. 12 catches, 246 yards, 4 touchdowns, 1.2 catches, and 24.6 yards a game. He played 10 games where he was actually part of the roster. So he was decent in limited work. He was very efficient, 20 yards a catch on those catches. As I said, wide receiver 3 behind Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed for now. But, you know, it's better than I thought it would be. And he's still worth rostering because the Saints didn't draft his replacement. What's the path to relevance? Building on the rookie year. I mean, he did show efficiency. And of course, one thing that I think, okay, so we talk about, it used to be a 3rd-year breakout. Then it became a 2nd-year breakout. Now we expect if wide receivers don't deliver in year 1, that's it. It's not really the case. I do agree. The 3rd-year breakout, that's finished. That's not a thing anymore. But for a lot of these day 3 project wide receivers, it takes a year. Sometimes they just can't show it in year 1. A.T. Perry was a project. He did show something nice on the field. So considering that they have a depth chart spot open for him, he's definitely someone who could give you some value. Once again, I tend to value rookies higher. So he's actually higher in KTC's value than mine. There's a reason that most of my stashes and sleepers are rookies, but we're focusing on veterans here. And Perry is one of my favorite wide receiver stashes, of which there are almost none because I tend to prefer stashing running backs. But if I had to choose one, A.T. Perry would be high on that list. Lastly, we're going to close with Eric Gray, running back from the Giants. So, as you know, he was drafted in the 5th round last year and didn't really deliver. Behind Saquon Barkley and Matt Breida was the backup. Eric Gray really did nothing. 17 carries, 48 yards, 6 catches for 22 yards. He barely played. Now, what is the current situation? So, the Giants let Saquon Barkley walk. Devin Singletary is their starter. They signed him to a 3-year deal. It's really a 2-year deal. He'll be competing with Tyrone Tracy for the RB2. Now, let's take a look at the path to relevance for Eric Gray. He's far more experienced as a running back than Tracy. Tracy is a converted wide receiver. Gray was a successful running back in college, a good prospect. Older, but a good prospect. In fact, both of them are older. They both turned 25 in November. So we're talking about 2 older players, and they will be competing directly for the RB2 role. And as we know, yes, Devin Singletary had some success on the Texans. However, he struggles with large workloads over time. We know that Devin Singletary has never held down a large workload for an extended period of time. He can do it in short bursts. Is it going to hold up over a 17-game season? I really don't think so. I really don't think that's something Devin Singletary can do. So they're going to need a backup and also a potential handcuff if Singletary goes down. Now, Gray on KTC is running back 82. I actually have him at running back 74. I just think that people have just decided that Tyrone Tracy is better. Tyrone Tracy has minimal to no experience as a running back, 1 season playing running back. I am not sure that he's just going to become the backup immediately. It's why I'm not quite as high on Tyrone Tracy as some other rookies. So Eric Gray, who's probably going to be cut in dynasty leagues, maybe he's the better value add, especially since you won't have to spend a late third-round rookie pick to get him. You will be able to get Eric Gray for nothing. I guarantee you he'll be cut after most rookie drafts. Now, if you like the video so far, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. I have one Patreon question, which came from my Patreon Discord, which you can sign up for there at patreon.com/fantasyadvice. And only patrons get to ask advanced questions for the YouTube. So let's jump into our question today. How many future firsts, not 2024, so 2025, would it take to sell Chase in a 10-team one quarterback? I was offered 3 firsts and 1 second for Chase and Amari Cooper, but I don't like it. What are your thoughts? Well, in a 1 QB, the only way to get long-term stud assets is through stud wide receivers. In a super flex, you can get it through stud quarterbacks, but quarterbacks don't hold value in 1 QB. So it's really just those stud wide receivers. In a 10-team league, you're going to need a lineup of studs to win after the first couple of years of a dynasty league. So studs are really important. So for this offer, let's say 325 firsts and a second for Chase and Cooper, I'd rather have Cooper over a second, and 3 firsts, while it's a decent offer, in this 1 QB format, even though it's 10-team, it's not going to be enough for Chase for me. I'm going to need something guaranteed. And if none of those firsts ends up being early, there's something guaranteed in there. Is the 2025 class my favorite? No. There's not going to be, there's no Marvin Harrison Jr. There's not going to be one. We would know a year in advance. There is no Marvin Harrison Jr. in the 2025 class. So, you're not going to get something that can replace Chase. So for me, I would need a little bit more than this offer. Probably the second's on the wrong side, and then maybe delete Amari Cooper, and then maybe we're talking. Now, if you like the video, make sure to like and leave a comment with your thoughts on my Dynasty stashes today. As always, the best way to support the channel is to subscribe. And don't forget to hit that notifications bell so you can be notified about all my exciting content as it drops. Of course, if you want my full Dynasty Fantasy Football advice, it's available on the Patreon. Every sign up helps support my independent fantasy football content. But once again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all later.